Hi, welcome to the Early Stage Marketer podcast, where I speak to marketers in the trenches doing the work. In just 20 minutes, you hear the story of one challenge they faced, how they navigated it, and what they learned from it. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share with a friend. Hi,
Um,
Amos. Welcome to the Early Stage Marketer podcast. It's good to have you here. And for everyone listening to us for the first time, Early Stage Marketer podcast, where marketers, I like to say, who are deep in the trenches doing the work, share something they've struggled with and, how they navigated it and then the lesson they learned thereafter. So I'm sure that at the end of this episode, what me and Amos will talk about, it's something you can relate to. And I mean, from the lessons Amos learned, I'm sure you can also apply it in your own life and come out at the other side stronger. I love what you said you struggled with. And trust me, I think it's even a universal problem. If you ask me to survey everyone working who has ever worked, currently working, I think 95% of people can relate and say at one point in their lives and in their careers they worked with difficult bosses. But now let's narrow it down to you. Can you take us back to that time? What was happening? What was happening in that role? What made the situation with your boss very difficult? And then was there a specific moment where you were in SaaS, when we talk about onboarding, we talk of aha moments. So was there like a moment, your own aha moment, but in this context, where you were like, no, I'm done. I'm not going to fix this. This situation is unfixable and I'm just moving on to something else.
okay. I think I'll
Yeah.
just start from like the bottom up.
Okay.
Because I've experienced it twice. So like I mean bottom because in terms of
Mm,
others or questions you asked. So I think
mm-hmm.
the aha moment for me for the first time was when I received a task Saturday night, like by mail.
Mm-hmm.
I this my leader then. I was like, I should submit this Monday morning.
Okay.
and and then I was like, it was there and then. I was like, oh, interesting. I have another task for myself. Then I started writing my like resignation mail. And there and
Yeah.
then I sent that in. I sent in my notice. I was like, okay, this has gotten to the point where this person no longer values my own time. Like, I mean,
Mm.
person doesn't value me as a person. The person
Yeah.
I'm talking about like things person never like really what's the word? Value your work. Um
Yeah.
and and I think there's one word that like comes to my mind, and like, it's sort of empathy, but like not empathy in
Oh.
the sense of like in terms of like, oh, you should pity someone or something like that. I mean, this one is not doing a
Mm.
good job, obviously, like probably as like a
Yeah.
person do and all. But like empathy in terms of like how you deal with people and how you relate with people and how you try to achieve things.
Mm.
Um, I think so that was like sort of my aha moment. Then I think the second time it happened. Uh, I think what I just knew was like, okay, I've gone through this before. I'm not going to go through this
Mm.
again. And I
Yeah.
think that rule was just like probably like 2, 3 weeks when I saw the signs. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this was similar to what I'd experienced before. That wasn't good for me. Then
Yeah.
that was when I
So you,
jumped the
you
gun.
leaned into previous experience to know there's no need trying to salvage this situation. It's a hopeless situation.
Exactly.
So you mentioned this thing has happened twice. So you can just pick anyone, depending on the
I
one
guess.
that is most, relevant. But can you
Okay.
just walk us through what was happening? Most times when people talk of difficult bosses, it comes in different shapes and forms. Some people work with outrightly abusive people. I mean, I've heard of such scenarios. And then some people work with people who never want to hear your opinion, who shoot down your ideas. And then some other people, just like you, they have no regard for your time, and so it just comes in different shapes, size, and forms. But for you, you can just talk about any of the roles depending on the one you want. What was really going on in that role that made you term that situation as toxic, as difficult, and decide that it's not an ideal place for you?
Okay. So I think just talk about the first one. The first one was the who I mentioned was when I mentioned like
Yeah.
person sent a mail like Saturday night, the me done by
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah.
It was at first was more of the language. It was
Oh.
more, and I think this also played a part in the second one. It was more of like, okay, using insulting words,
Oh.
screaming, and
Mm,
shouting. That person was sort of an hybrid. I would be in
mm.
office together, and like this person could just walk in and just like scream at me, like, and
Oh.
everything. Sometimes use words that like shouldn't be used. And the
Mm,
interesting thing was that like he was always so diplomatic. Like, like when someone is like very, very diplomatic in their choice of words, but yeah, they are very, very, they are being very harsh. They're being very
yep.
aggressive. And when it became a recurring thing, because I joined the company before this person came in, and like not long
Yeah.
after I joined the person, this all started. So those series of things, first of all, the language, dealing with the teams, like how to manage
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yeah.
not being like trying to like understand like what is working. Like hear someone's perspective, hear people's opinions, and like just like
Yeah.
okay, yeah. But I think above all is has to do with like the language, the way you speak to the person and all. I like
Mm-hmm.
just touch on the second one, which was also similar, and I think it was just more of also
Mm,
the language. And this person was like,
yeah.
I remember after my first like call where I had like a rift and like this person talked me down and everything. The whole
Mm.
meeting was dead silent and everything. And when he dropped off, my teammates were like, "Oh, welcome, welcome," meaning that that was the
Welcome to this weird team dynamics.
so that meaning that that's the culture the man had, and I saw it play a role like in
Mm,
other aspects and everything. I've gone through this before. It was really a
yeah.
tough time for me. I know my words, and I'm not going to go through
I
this
love that.
again.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then that was just it. Yeah,
hmm Yeah, I love
yeah.
what you said about the way the person talks, right? And then I liked what you said about they're diplomatic, but the undertones you can sense the aggressions in the undertones. And what makes this kind of people, so let me just be plain. It's actually even better someone comes and calls you idiot. You're an idiot. You're a fool. You can see the verbal abuse straight on. Now there are those that do it, let's say in a nuanced way. They are not outrightly calling you an idiot, but they are actually being verbally abused. And the problem is you don't notice it on time. But what happens is those words begin to creep into your psyche. It begins to erode your self-confidence. And what makes this kind of situation very dangerous is you don't even know what's happening because they are not straight. I've actually had a friend who once worked in a place where they called her monkey. And I'm like, why are you in that kind of place?
Wow.
So it's actually better you're in that kind of place. They'll call you a monkey, be like, hold up, I'm done, you walk out. Than people who abuse you in the not so straightforward manner. And you never know. But you notice that one day you wake up, you're not as confident, you're not as outspoken, you're second guessing yourself. Thank you for that, Amos. I love that. Then in our previous conversation, you said something that you equally like. You said that the biggest lessons, right? Or the biggest lesson you learned in this situation was to believe in yourself. Okay. So what I really want to talk about is what's that process of believing in yourself. So I don't know if you're one of these people who have confidence inborn, but if you aren't, I just want to know what's that process of getting to that point where you're like, no, I actually have value. I believe in myself. I don't have to put up with this. So what's just that process where arrived at believing in yourself? Yeah.
Okay, okay. I think this is going to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll talk about myself first and probably try to like drop maybe advice or so. But for
Yeah.
me, like believing in
We'll
myself,
get to the advice part later. Anyways,
yeah.
it's one
Oh,
of the
oh,
questions.
oh, okay. For me, believing in myself is I don't want to say inborn, but as being a thing
Mm-hmm.
of like having practicing from young. And it's a
Oh.
sense of like I think I was saying something like there are a lot of times I do things that are very scary. I'm going to talk about like
Mm.
public speaking, for example. I usually use that as an example
Yeah.
because it shows.
Mm.
Like someone is
Mm.
inviting me, come and get the mic, come and speak on something and everything. And I'm literally
Mm.
like, my ass is literally beaten. Like I'm literally like shy, scared, extremely nervous and everything,
Shaking.
shaky. But like the craziest thing about it is that like first of all, I'll probably be the one to first volunteer. Like, okay, let me come and do this. In some cases,
Mm-hmm.
regardless, and I'll still
Yeah.
walk, collect it,
Mm-hmm.
and probably once I
Mm-hmm.
start, because I said, the old nervousness and like being shy and everything
Dies
sort of
down.
goes. So like my confidence is more of like do it afraid. I think that's the best way.
Mm-hmm.
So like over
Mm-hmm.
time, I've done like a lot of things that like, I mean, if I start talking about them now, you'll be like, oh, these things are wild. I remember when I left like my main job, what I studied in school. to just go all into marketing without having like a feel
Mm.
safe for any other job. I just like resign, I'm
Yeah.
going and everything. And I've sort
Mm.
of like been able to like do a lot of things afraid, like take a lot of risk that like over time I'm sort of like, okay, yes, because I've done that, I can now like do this. And that
Mm-hmm.
talks about like, okay, because you have like a track record, I mean, you've once you've been able to like do things afraid, once you've like built up that confidence by force, like regardless of the fact that you were scared, you did this.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm.
same thing, you won't be scared to do it again.
Mm.
And then that's what now people now call like, okay, confidence. But like, I mean, because you have done this before, now like sort of brings out the confidence in me and everything. And that was like one of the things I was going to drop. I have a friend that writes like this Substack. He calls it the pursuit of better. And in one of like his editions, he talked about like always trying to remind yourself of those good things. I probably would maybe share the link with you. Always try to remind yourself of like your wins, even if they are little,
Mm-hmm.
or jot them down. I don't jot them down or do things like that, but like that sort of hits hard because if you remind yourself that like, oh, you've done this before. Oh, you went to school for like 4 years, 5 years, and so I mean, you survived Nigeria to this point. What is there that you can't? But yeah, just reminding yourself of those small wins and then doing it afraid. I think that last one, doing it afraid, is what has worked for me like over time. Yeah.
I love that emote. You know what I actually really pick? It's almost like having a confidence bank. That's what I interpret from what you said. It's almost like small actions you've taken that kind of, should I say, counts or stores up so that when it comes to taking that big major decision, you can look at those small actions you've taken in the past and you're like, yeah, I can do this. So I guess what you're actually trying to say is do small things afraid, right? It can even be maybe you're camera shy, starting a TikTok
A
channel where you
podcast.
yap on camera.
Okay.
Yeah, podcast just like me that used to be camera shy. Now, what you notice is over time, just small things. And the beauty of doing these things, right? Because there are literally no stakes, or the stakes are literally low. If I say, oh, I'm camera shy, but I decide to release a video podcast every week, there's no, I mean, nothing. There's no risk. But what it also does is, in that moment where I need that big confidence to make that leap, because I've taken smaller actions, I'll somehow draw from that and make the leap. Um, I
Yeah.
really love that. So, what did you study that you switched from to marketing?
Oh, I studied civil engineering.
No
Um,
wonder your newsletter is engineering for marketers. I have a feeling you're still in
yeah.
love with that field. That's interesting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
thank
mean,
you.
sorry.
Okay, that's really interesting. Very. Okay, so something you touched on briefly, but we can just now come back to it. So if someone is in a similar situation right now. And this final question is very dear to my heart because I think some weeks ago I wrote something in on LinkedIn about how I've been having conversations with people. Now, both people in marketing, people who are not in marketing, people who work in tech, and people who do not work in tech. And so it's like everyone is unhappy with their jobs. And now I don't mean those tiny unhappiness that you just, those pesky annoyances you have to stand, because everything has a downside. But I mean a deep unhappiness with their jobs. And then and most people are afraid to leave. And to be honest, I totally get it because here, this is man, we're in Nigeria, zero safety net. How you can't leave your job and fight for unemployment. I mean, even that your small job you hate, you're using it to support other people, to other people. So you can't just up and leave. So I know how the way our society is constructed, designed, literally just keeps us trapped, right? But let's just assume there is someone who is in the same situation, who is in a highly toxic environment, difficult bosses, in different shapes and forms. Now, what would you say to them? Like based on your experience and how you've navigated this in the past, what are you going to say to this person right now? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What am I going to say to this person? So I
Mm-hmm.
think there are two things actually. Like there are two different kinds of people. Like that at
Yeah.
there's someone that probably doesn't have like a lot of responsibilities that
Yeah.
like there might be an illusion for the person thinking that
Mm.
he or she has a responsibility, but like you find the case that like a lot of like young Nigerians that probably don't even like have anything to lose still like
Mm.
find themselves in this situation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think to those set of people, I would say like just leave. Like you would find like the most important thing is that like if you leave, what are you doing with your idle time? Like before you get a job, are you trying to like
Mm-hmm.
are you trying to improve yourself? Are you trying to grow yourself? Because I think
Mm.
more often than not, like they have this illusion that like yes, because the country is hard, which is true. You shouldn't just leave a job if you don't have another one and everything. But
Yeah.
like at the end of the day,
Mm.
if you don't have like people depending on you, like actual people depending on you, not the illusion that you probably
Yeah.
built for yourself, I would
Mm-hmm.
just say like jump the ship and everything.
Mm.
But then I think this one will now like fall into like the general category. So I sort of realized that like so the first time I had that issue, I'm going to talk about that. Like I had a mentor, like, and I still have a mentor. He's been one of my best mentors,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he wanted me to leave, and eventually I left. Like that was the first time, and then
Mm.
before you knew it, I got like an IRP that was like was what was what
Two
fully
times.
remote.
Oh.
Yeah, that then was hybrid. Let's up a hybrid and like I mean 3 days a week, the
Mm-hmm.
transport is going and everything. And then my mentor was like, you can see that there's better outside. Then he started telling me about like
Yeah.
I said
Yeah.
yeah. Then the second time, so like I think the first one is like try to have people that you talk to. Like it helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like anytime I have problems, I have people like there's some people that like I would just call them to like having people to talk to actually helps because you'll be surprised like the wisdom or the ways you could find to navigate it because if you have responsibilities and it turns down that you have to stay for a while, you'll probably be able to like, okay, find a way to like, okay, while you are staying for like 1 month, 2 months, making an actual plan for exit. Or probably these people would
Yeah.
even help you, give you a job, something like that. Then another thing I learned from like the second time I experienced this issue was that remember I did say that um when I experienced my first issue with the second person, and they were like, welcome to the company, like that's the culture of the company.
Mm.
And I'm not trying to be like harsh or something, but I realized that like those that stayed in that environment did not grow. Like ah, I'm looking for the best way to put it, but like it's like they haven't worked on themselves to the extent that if they leave, they'll probably get something better or like they know that like there's way better out there. I mean, there's probably the solution that like there's nothing better out there. But you realize that like because nowadays if I'm going to like go to a new job, if anytime I'm going to like I try to research people that work in the company, not just about like trying to like because the kind of people there would let you know like what kind of company it is. Because it will be hard dealing with teammates that have not grown to like, okay, your level and everything. So I think that's something that's very, very important is that like, even if you're not facing any star situation now, how are you improving yourself currently? How are you growing currently? So that like when things like that come, you can be sure that like, okay, yes, you've done this, you can do this, and you'll be able to do this. So so that's just like something that's very, very important. So like first having people to talk to, having mentorship, having mentors, having friends, then also keep improving yourself, even if you're not facing that situation now. Like you have to like it's like when they say yeah, I mean I'm not very good like in the whole financial investment, but like it makes sense. Like invest your money in something in the next few years, they're like it's going to grow. So you should also like keep investing in yourself so that when recession happens in this context in your career or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know that
Mm-hmm.
like it's up there that like okay, anybody that comes to talk to you knows that okay, you're actually worth something. Can you come and do this for now? Probably you're doing it till you find something better and you know you would find something better because why you've done the work in yourself. So yeah, that's just it
Oh
for me.
my gosh. Amos, this is, you just dropped gems. I wish I could applaud, but this is so powerful, right? At first I was like, cool. In fact, I had to make a note about what you said about having an exit plan. When I was still saying very solid point, you said something equally powerful that most times there is a correlation between you've stopped growing and what you're willing to tolerate. Okay. So if you've not been investing in yourself, you've not grown career wise, you're more than willing to stay stuck out there because again there's just a correlation between your confidence level and how much you've invested in yourself. If you know you've
Exactly.
invested in yourself, you generally feel more confident about yourself, and if you feel more confident about yourself, it's easier to take a bet on yourself Oh my God, this is so powerful, Amos. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So thank you so much for. I mean, we've come to the end. We're on time, just 20, almost 23 minutes. But thank you so much, Amos, for sharing this, right? When we're talking on WhatsApp, I was like, Amos, don't you want, that was some months ago, I was like, Amos, don't you want to help a struggling marketer? But trust me, if someone listened to just this last thing we said right now, it would be of so much benefit to them. So thank you very much. And I hope you'll come back soon some other time. Have a
No
lovely
problem.
evening.
Thank you. I will. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
for having me. I will be too.
Thank you for listening to the Early Stage Marketer podcast. I hope today's story gave you something to reflect on or even something to try in your own work. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. See you next time.